What's up, everybody, and welcome to one of the most censored channels on YouTube. In this video, I'm going to be taking a look at two of my favorite subjects, one being UFOs, the other one being QAnon, and mashing them together. And the reason I'm doing so is because what better way to wade through one of the most confusing topics out there in the UFO subject than by taking the drops of QAnon being the information dissemination program being conducted by top-level military intelligence insiders. Why not take what they've been trying to tell us and decode that to gain more clarity on one of the most confusing and important subjects out there in UFOs. And in fact, when you go through Q's drops, you gain really good clarity on many facets of this topic. So we're going to do exactly that here. As you can see, I have about 10, 12 drops here, and I have them laid out chronologically, beginning in 2017. Yep, they've been trying to tell us these things for quite a while. I'm going to start with 2017 and move up to the modern day. So we're going to start with drop number 117 here. That's the first one I have for you. Very early on, happened on November 6th, 2017, about a week into Q's postings. And there was a couple lines in this drop that really began making me resonate with Q, because very early on I was skeptical. I'm like, is this even legit? But I saw these couple lines in this drop, started connecting with it. And these lines, I'll read them for you, state, what is the single biggest event that can generate many nation states to pay out billions? That answer, in the context of this drop, was war. War is a huge event that makes many states pay out a lot of money to defense contractors, making them their war toys. Next question, who audits where the money goes? Well, trick question, because before this current presidency, before Donald Trump and Q team, the Pentagon, the Department of Defense had never, ever been audited, ever. First audit was conducted in 2018. Next line, $15,000 for a toothbrush? Reconcile. $15,000 for a toothbrush. When Q posted that, I was like, wow, because this is a direct reference to the money siphoning that goes into the black projects of the defense contractors from the Department of Defense budget. And it's been happening for like decades. It's happening for a long, long time. In recent years, it's been getting crazier, way more exponential with how much money they've been siphoning. You know, the day before 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld, oh, we can't find $2.3 trillion. In 2015, there was a Department of Defense Inspector General report that stated, oh, that number in, quote, misadjustments, or whatever they called it, is now up to 6.5 trillion. So there's billions and billions, if not trillions of dollars that have been literally siphoned. And by Q saying $15,000 for a toothbrush, they're letting us know exactly how it's siphoned. And that's by price gouging of basic shit. I mean, truth in plain sight right here. We know the elites, they love to put the truth in plain sight. If you've ever seen the movie Independence Day, boom, put beautifully in that movie. You know, after the aliens attack in Independence Day, and they bring the president to Area 51 that he's never heard about before, and he's going down into the Area 51 lower levels, and he's saying, how the heck do we pay for all this stuff? And one of the supporting characters goes, you don't think they spend $40,000 on a toilet seat, do ya? Shoot, the deep state was telling us exactly what they were doing 2.5 decades ago. And Q is giving us a hint right here. They charge up the butt for basic stuff, pocket the rest of that money. You know, since 2018, we've been getting drips and drips of disclosure. You know, I'm sure they're trying to prep the public to understand a lot of these things. One news story we heard about was the Air Force charging nearly $1,400 for a coffee cup. Okay? So many, many instances in the public domain that show you exactly what they do and that prove it's not a conspiracy theory. So that's how they get a lot of the money for the reverse engineering and all sorts of stuff they do in the black projects that have to do with UFO technology. Q was hinting not at UFOs, but at some of that foundational understanding very early on in drop number 117. Next drop, number 295, only about a month later, December 7th, 2017. Now, the context of this drop, it was a particular day when Q was just unloading a lot of different photographs of deep staters. Now, again, it was very early on. Q was laying out that big picture, posting photographs of Rothschilds and Podesta, John McCain, Hillary Clinton, Obama, George Soros, all sorts of different people. could have been helping us understand who these deep staters are and their connections. Of course, in terms of Q, these photographs could have also been messages to the deep state as well, like, we see you guys, whatever the case. In one of these photographs, dropped 295, that happened on December 7th, a photo was posted of Hillary Clinton walking right next to Lawrence Rockefeller, one of the Rockefeller family, now deceased, but an old photograph of them two together. Hillary Clinton was walking with a book in her hand, and this book was titled, Are We Alone? The Philosophical Implications of Extraterrestrial Life. Wow. And then when you actually dig into this photograph, you find that this photo is about 25 to 30 years old. It came from the early 90s, from an initiative that was actually called the Rockefeller Initiative, because during Bill Clinton's first presidential administration, there was a quiet but public initiative where Lawrence Rockefeller was basically trying to petition Bill Clinton and connecting in writing to many of his staff members, and there were many different principals and researchers involved in this huge initiative. I mean, they were basically trying to disclose UFOs in Bill Clinton's first presidency. But of course, that would not have been a true, honest disclosure. It would have been some giant psyop, some giant limited hangout, partial disclosure, where they give us a little bit of truth to try to brush the rest under the rug. And of course, they're going to try to capitalize and gain money or profit on that tiny bit of contorted truth they give us, right? So, holy crap, when I saw this photograph posted, I have some expertise within the ufology field, so I knew where this photograph came from, and it blew my mind. I don't think a lot of other people in the Q research community have that sort of expertise, so they might not have seen this, but I did, and that is huge. And the huge thing about this as well is that when you research into the Rockefeller Initiative, I'm going to drop some names of individuals that have been found on FOIA documents, Freedom of Information Act documents, who were sort of connected to this big tangled web that was the Rockefeller Initiative. Well, the principals within this initiative, you got Hillary Clinton on there, you got Bill Clinton, you also have John Podesta, of odd people, Interestingly enough, we know he's been hinting here and there about his belief in UFOs and the truth that is out there, and et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot more to that. Okay, all this UFO stuff goes very deep in elite circles here, as I'm showing you. So we have all these principals, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Podesta, Lawrence Rockefeller is a principal as well. We got the watcher category. The watchers, I guess people who are just like kind of involved with this, maybe sitting back and studying, maybe people who they have in the initiative, so when they need them, they can use them. But these watchers, we have Al Gore on that list, weirdly enough. Bill Richardson, the former governor of New Mexico. Bill Richardson, who was, of course, accused recently of being involved in some of the sex scandals with Jeffrey Epstein. Then we have George Stephanopoulos on this list as well. You might recognize him from ABC, top anchor at ABC there. George Stephanopoulos, also connected with Jeffrey Epstein. I believe it was George Stephanopoulos who partied with Epstein after he was released from jail the first time. And then, of course, George Stephanopoulos being a part of ABC, who's recently been outed for trying to cover up the Epstein story years ago. So, wow, what a coinky-dink. Two Epstein-connected people on this Rockefeller Initiative list. Like, what are they trying to disclose UFOs for? Odd. And then we have the researcher list. I'm going to drop a few names in this researcher list, and you can make up your own mind about them. So we got researchers, Robert Bigelow, the aerospace billionaire. Odd. We've got Dr. Stephen Greer on this list of researchers. That's most definitely odd. Linda Moulton Howe. We have Jacques Vallée. And we actually have public photographs of all these folks being pictured at the Rockefeller Ranch as well during meetings that were happening there at the Rockefeller Ranch in the Tetons for this Rockefeller Initiative thing back in the early 90s. So you're telling me that Dr. Stephen Greer and Linda Moulton Howe and Jacques Vallée and others are on the same list of people like John Podesta and the Clintons? Boo! I don't care what the situation is. I wouldn't want to be featured anywhere near those sort of people. Wow, and when you look at those names too, like Bigelow, Linda Moulton Howe, a lot of these folks are involved in much of the mainstream UFO stuff that's happening today. So it's like the Rockefeller Initiative, right now, decades later, it's like shifted and morphed a little bit. There's some new names. Some of these names on this old Rockefeller Initiative have fallen off. But, whoo-hoo! You know, with Q dropping that photo, I think that was a massive message. You know, like they knew this BS UFO disclosure, you know, this CIA UFO disclosure, basically, they knew it was going to be coming, which is why I think they dropped this photograph. So next drop, let's go into 376, just a couple of weeks later. So drop number 376, and anon on the boards, on 4chan, might have been 8chan at this point, but nevertheless, an anon, somebody on there, asked Q, are UFOs a distraction? Q said, how far away is the closest star? What do you think? Very vague, very sort of rhetorical question there. And this confused a lot of people at the time. Are UFOs a distraction? Is Q saying that UFOs are a distraction? Well, in drops just a few days later on December 22nd here, drop 442 and 443, Q gives us a little more clarity on that situation. Q then says, message back, UFOs were put out to detract from drops. Now, Q isn't referencing all UFO information, the whole UFO subject being put out to detract from drops, okay? Very important subject. Goes hand in hand, you know, with everything else going on. Everything's connected. What Q is referencing here is specifically that New York Times article that dropped December 16th, 2017 that started exploding that Tom DeLonge to the Stars Academy initiative into the public consciousness, right? And again, you know, when I just said these Rockefeller Initiative people from 20, 30 years ago are connected into some of the modern mainstream disclosures happening now, look at all the names of the early Rockefeller Initiative around Tom DeLonge these days. You had John Podesta emailing with Tom DeLonge in the WikiLeaks emails that were released in 2016. Stephen Greer has said that he's met Tom DeLonge before. You know, in the past. You got Linda Moulton Howe selling Tom DeLonge some alleged alien alloys or like exotic metals. You've got Robert Bigelow. He was the one who was contracted with that AATIP, that ATIP program that ran from 2007 to 2012, that New York Times story blew up, like one of the centers around this whole mainstream push. So, wow, all these Rockefeller Initiative guys are connected right now to all this stuff going on. So that's why Q is saying it's all put out to detract from the drops. These are all like agency connected or like people that are either completely ignorant and just useful idiots, or they're blackmailed, or they're being paid off, or whatever the case. Like, it's not a benevolent UFO disclosure we're seeing. And this is why I often say UFOs aren't a distraction. Very important subject, very important information within it. It's the mainstream BS they're trying to sell us. That's the distraction. They're trying to take people's attention away from more important disclosures going on. They're also trying to set up their gatekeepers. How many authors and journalists and documentarians and various people are trying to be set up as the gatekeepers, as the authorities with UFO information or with disclosure information. Then they turn around and try to attack conspiracy theories or call people crazy, or, you know, they're being set up as the gatekeepers. You got to understand that, okay? A lot of what we're seeing in the mainstream right now in regards to UFOs, complete nonsense. But there's a lot of quality UFO information out there as well. So, boom, Q answering that right there. And then in drop 443 saying, space is critical. It's critical to our NatSec, our national security. And it's coming back in a big way, and it was terminated for a specific reason. So let's quickly decode those lines. Number one, space is coming back in a big way. This is basically a Q proof for the Space Force, because it wasn't long after this that Donald Trump announced the Space Force, and boom, that's that right there. The Space Force is like the white hat version of disclosure. They're trying to gain access to these black projects that they've been shut out of for so long. You know, they're trying to acquire them, gain control of them so they can start disclosing them, because these black projects have been in deep state control. So the good guys within the military and the good guys within government are trying to gain access. Disclose those things. Space is critical to our national security. Of course it is. When it comes to space, and actually the real, true, hidden technologies and sciences when it comes to space, critical to our national security. 0-point energy, anti-gravity technology. There's a reason why the deep state has tried to suppress it and make people think the subject's crazy for so long so they don't look into it. And then it was terminated for a specific reason. The deep state, they were trying to move all of the space stuff from the public sector to the private sector, essentially over the last like 10, 15 years, because the private sector is a lot more secretive. You can't be FOIA'd in the private sector. Corporation can't be FOIA'd. You know, it's a lot easier to keep stuff secret in private companies than it is within public governments. So that's the decode of that particular drop. All right, so we're finishing up with 2017 here, moving into 2018. And the first drop in 2018 comes from May 11th. All right, and this is an interesting drop. It's a little bit fun for me because I was featured in it. This was sort of the first time that I was cued. But the reason why I'm dropping this drop in to this list is because it simply referenced free energy and secret space programs very briefly. This was a Reddit article that Q dropped. It was called The Info War Against Q. So this Reddit article, Q saying this is why we are here, and the title of this article was The Long and Secret Info Wars Against Q and How They Stayed Alive. It was essentially detailing how InfoWars was trying to subvert and undermine QAnon. And that's a long story. And my thoughts and what InfoWars really is, that's also a long story, long conversation. But again, the reason why I'm featuring this here is because it was briefly mentioned of these subjects, free energy and secret space programs. So when the author of this article mentioned me in here, they stated that my expertise is free energy and secret space programs. But I've been following Q on my YouTube channel, etc., etc. So, it was just incredible to me to see these two subjects, you know, whether or not they're my expertise is up for all of you to decide, but free energy and secret space programs, that's Q, like, not directly confirming it, but sort of indirectly confirming these things. And the very first time that happened in these drops, free energy, secret space programs, wow, my mind was blown. And then, of course, I was honored because I was featured in a drop that Q posted. But anyway, there's that. Now we're moving on into the mind-blowing, the big drops when it comes to UFOs in space in terms of QAnon. And this brings us to the 19th of September, 2018. And this was the big day, drop number 2222, synchronistically, and 2225. Now, these were during a Q&A. QAnon basically conducted like a Q&A on the 8chan boards and was almost about to break the freaking website during this Q&A because so many people were logging on, and they were getting into the big picture topics with this one. And in a couple of the questions that were asked and they answered, one of them was about, are we alone in this cosmos? Does ET life exist? And Roswell. It's essentially what the Anon asked Q. Are we alone? Roswell. Q says, no, we're not alone. Highest classification, consider the vastness of space. Very simple, but very profound right there. Here we literally have UFO disclosure coming from the White House, the presidency. It's just not happening in the typical way that everybody thinks disclosure is going to happen or wants it to happen. It's happening in a, backdoor, back channel sort of way here, unusual way, but boom, it's happening. We have official confirmation right there that we are not alone in this cosmos. Deal with it, folks. These drops actually triggered quite a few people, but that's just what has to happen with all the, misinformation and mind control that's out there. So it's confirmed. We're not alone in the cosmos. Highest classification. So QAnon actually saying that to the military-industrial complex, to the intelligence community, to military intelligence, this topic is of the highest classification. And it absolutely has been for hundreds, if not thousands of years, the ET UFO topic, because you're getting into talking about technologies like free energy, 0-point energy, like anti-gravity, like consciousness-assisted technologies, all sorts of different real scientific and real technological understanding. So that absolutely destroys the control systems. If we had technologies where we didn't need to pay our electricity bill anymore, that'd be great. and where we, could fly across seas in minutes. And not just that, but of course the cosmological understanding, how much of a spiritual revolution would that create if all of the, establishment religion and divide and conquer paradigms weren't out there. Like, oh my God, here's the spiritual revolution that happened. So that's why it's highest classification to them, because it would change everything if the full truth about this topic got out there. Now we're moving on into drop 2225. Boom. Anon asking Q during this Q&A session. Q, did NASA fake the moon landings? Have we been to the moon since then? Are there secret space programs? Is this why the Space Force was created? Some people were literally messaging me right after this, like, Jordan, was that you asking those questions? That sounds like something you would ask. Wasn't me, but sure sounds like something I would ask. Anyway, Q answers that anon. False. Moon landings are real, and programs exist that are outside of public domain. Again, that's all they needed to say, but that began exposing so many to different topics that they had never thought of before, and also triggered quite a few people because they have a lot of, false understandings about space and the reality out there. So let's decode these couple of drops. Q saying false, moon landings are real. Again, a lot of people think the moon landings are fake, and they're like bought and sold on that. And they think that every single little thing that NASA touches or has its name on it is fake. There's a lot of black and white illogical thinking when it comes to different space-related matters, and the moon landing is one. Now, I'll just posit to you this question. What if Apollo did get to the moon, but they didn't tell us the surrounding situation with it? They didn't tell us the truth about what they really found there. There's a lot of little data points that we can make a case for that with. It could have been such that they did film fakes, but there were some real films too. And they released all of that into the public domain to completely muddy the waters and confuse the hell out of everybody. Then that way, whatever they really did find on the moon, the NASA astronauts, whether they found ancient structures there, whether they saw extraterrestrial craft on the moon, whatever the case, boom, a lot easier to hide it that way. When everybody's squabbling over here, arguing about whether the moon landing was fake or not, really easy for them to hide what was really found there. So think of those things. And then number two, programs exist that are outside of public domain. Boom, again, secret space programs, which were indirectly mentioned before, being confirmed by top-level military intelligence people. Incredible day, incredible drops these were. So programs exist that are outside of public domain. As we've outlined here, with a whole lot of money that have gone into them, and actually with some incredible technologies that have gone into them over the last, 70 or 80 years as well, that they've kept very secret, all the R&D with. And then also, as we outlaid before, there is a massive partial disclosure, limited hangout disclosure that's being conducted in the mainstream and alternative CIA-backed media right now, to try to confuse us of all this stuff. They're trying to offer up just a tiny piece of contorted information, contorted truth, to brush the rest of the secret space program stuff. And also, that hardcore sort of dark occult information. Like we were talking earlier with that Rockefeller Initiative, we've got Podesta connected directly in with a lot of these people disclosing UFOs in the mainstream right now. Just really weird stuff. So I'll just say, I'll take my disclosure from QAnon over whatever I see in the New York Times any day of the week. So let's just say that. Now let's finish up with the last couple of drops. There's actually more after this one. A couple more hints here. Our next one, we go to November 5th, 2018. About a year ago, drop 2426. I'm in love with this one. This is probably my favorite one right here. And it's so subtle in this drop, but it's great. So this was a tweet that Q linked. And in this tweet, if we actually click the link, follow it to the tweet on Twitter, it was a video. And it was a video that was posted by a handle called Disclosure BP, Disclosure Backpack. And in this video, he edited it all up himself. And he was poking fun at the mainstream media narrative that QAnon is dangerous to the president, it's dangerous to his reputation, blah, blah, blah. During that time, there was this huge narrative in the mainstream media that QAnon was dangerous to Trump. So he was poking fun at that with this video. QAnon links this video, And this video is basically like these cartoon characters called the bad dudes, and they're trying to go in and save Trump from Q. So very sarcastic video. Anyway, at the very end, the very ending shot, so the bad dudes save Trump, and they're standing there in front of the White House, and all the cartoon characters are smiling. The very ending shot says "the end." You have Donald Trump there smiling. You have a giant flying saucer pictured over the White House. The end. Wow. I'll just say, if Q didn't want to post that, you know, if that was too controversial for Q to post, they wouldn't have posted it. You know, everything that Q does is purposeful, strategic to a T. So I think that was purposeful. That was in there for people to see. UFO over the White House, I mean, if we're talking full disclosure here, sure, 90% of what Q talks about is political information, 90-95%. And of course, I mean, that's the main fight right now. The swamp needs to be drained for information like this to really come out. But what happens when that swamp is drained? In a few years, you know, however long it's going to take, maybe a few months, few years. When that swamp is drained, where do we go? Well, that's the big picture, folks. And that's what I often think about. I'll report on and research politics, you know, because it is important. But a lot of times my mind is like lost off with the big picture. And I'm like visualizing how awesome this society is going to be and all that jazz and what we're really going to get access to. And holy crap, I think, boom, Donald Trump very well knows quite a bit about flying saucers and all this stuff. He's been read in on more than people might realize when it comes to UFOs and secret space programs. And I think that is one of the goals, one of the priorities they have with all this disclosure too, is getting that released. UFO over the White House. Good stuff. Good video disclosure backpack. Shout out for that, Q. And then last one, and we'll finish up here. This just happened a few days ago, man. Incredibly enough, 11/11/2019, drop 3585. Project Looking Glass. Woo! Huge stuff right there. Q dropping Project Looking Glass with a question mark after it, like questioning the project, sort of just name dropping it to get us to research into it. And we actually do some digging into Project Looking Glass. Now, we don't have 100%, we know for sure information in regards to it, but there's a lot of corroborating information that we can point to, with Project Looking Glass basically being a project done back in the 70s and 80s that involved reverse engineered extraterrestrial technologies to try to remote view different points in time, basically different points within the coordinate time system or the temporal landscape. I did a long video on that I just released a few days ago. I'll link it. I'll make it pop up. I'll drop a link below. You'll be able to find it. I won't go into that long conversation here, but nevertheless, this might be one of the biggest drops to date. I mean, these ones were huge. Consider the vastness of space and programs exist outside of public domain. That's incredible. But now for Q actually to be naming the name of projects and getting people to like research specifics on this stuff, and also opening up the avenue for alternative sciences, alternative understandings of space and time and electricity and gravity, that's starting to get out there. That's incredible stuff. So anyway, that's all I have, folks. That's pretty much every single drop I know of where Q references directly or indirectly UFOs in some way. And again, it lays out a fairly well picture, even so far, even only having like, 10, 11 drops here. Like you can see, wow, black projects with UFO technologies, free energy, secret space programs that a lot of money has gone into. And wow, the deep state right now, they're trying to disclose UFOs, but they're trying to disclose it in this totally bullshit way that I have all these half-truths with, you know, controlled opposition plants pushing it in a huge tangled web of nonsense. Well, yes, UFOs we see in the mainstream are a distraction, but the UFO subject itself is not a distraction. There's actually a lot of very important information within the UFO subject. So I thank Q for trying to help give us some clarity behind it all. I'm more than happy to help you guys with understanding it, and I thank you for taking this journey here with me. So if you want to find out more, go to jordansather.com, subscribe to my newsletter in case they censor me here. Go find me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. All those links will be down below. Ways to support my independent journalism will be down below as well. And thank you so much for watching, everybody. I'll be back soon. Done!